Are you back for more? Well, I got some for you. Roy Simpson here, and we're going through the Monster Maker here that I have on the Google Sheet. We have already gone through step 1, step 2, step 3 of the Monster Maker process. Now we're going into step 4. So this is Johnny the bad guy from all the previous steps. Step 4 is right here. Pick some features. Please do that. First of all, based upon Johnny's was a combat rank. Let me scroll up to show it. There we are. Because he's a Paragon, Johnny gets a lot of cool stuff. So down below, you get to see in the step 4 here, he gets Paragon Power and Paragon Defense. And you should choose Sneaky as well. Go to the Features tab and select those. These do not automatically select because I'm too lazy to code that in. So now we begin the Features tab part. This is going to be somewhat lengthy. I always start just by getting these main ones out of the way. So Paragon Power, Paragon Defense, and Sneaky. So here we go. Scrolling down very quickly to, it's all alphabetically sorted. Keep your eye on the bold left hand stuff here. Paragon Defense, Paragon Power, and Sneaky. Where are we here for Sneaky? Sneaky. There we are. Sneaky. Now, you'll notice that I have in here 5 charges. And you might say, wait a second, in GiffyGlyph's, this is an unlimited thing. It's supposed to be common, yada, yada, yada. But if you actually use GiffyGlyph's documentation for creating this feature, it is not a common feature. So I get it. Some people are going to say, but these are extra special whatevers. But the reality is, you can, even if you're not a lurker, you can select this. So a certain rarity should be associated with this other than common. And if you scroll all the way over to the right, here's kind of the big conversation about this features page. If you scroll all the way over to the right, here are my justifications for each of the settings. Now, a lot of them do not have justifications yet, but the Sneaky one, that feature costs 2 additional effect points because it's a boon and it applies a boon that's less than the Cloaker boon, which is rare. And I couldn't, it's really hard to find exactly what boon it would be, but it's definitely not a rare boon. I chose uncommon just because, well, it made sense. And it's a bonus action, so that's an extra let's see, an extra effect point somewhere in here. Yeah, so I think it's actually right here. It's a bonus action, so that costs an extra effect point. I do it differently than the way GiffyGlyph does it. He says -1, but I say it costs you an extra 1. So you're going to spend 3 altogether, and that will be an uncommon feature. And that's how I get to that. This is an uncommon feature. But you can see the layout of a feature is the title and how many charges or how long it takes for cooldown or recovery, whatever it may be. That's this bolded leftmost column. And then from that column all the way over to the right is pretty much stuff you're not really going to touch too often. You're never going to touch the trait name column because that's just the trait name. It gets used to create this bold column. The description, there's a lot of coding in that. You'll also not touch that. You take the hide action. That's exactly what you do. If there's a requirement for that, you would type that in here. But again, this specific feature has no requirement, so please leave it blank. But if you put it in here, you could see all of a sudden there's this requirement. I should put in a word. There you go. You can see a requirement comes in, and when it does that, it puts in little markdown. It puts in markdown. And the reason why it puts markdown in is because this is meant to be exported into improved initiative, and it'll automatically bold things for us and do line breaks for us and stuff like that. I'm going to remove that. In the meantime, there's the actual effect description right there. If there's a duration associated with it, you would put that in there. There's the recovery options. If this is something that requires some type of recovery, there might have a recovery event, or you might have some type of way to recover charges. So those are on those lists. It might be an empowered action. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And if it's delayed or dooming, you'd put in how many rounds it's delayed by or how many rounds it's dooming. Okay. And then the rest of this is like what main category. That's not very useful unless you're hunting for features, which we'll talk about. I rarely use the subcategory, but it's there. The effect type, that's for me. But here we go. Activation time is bonus action. The rarity is uncommon. If you want to change the limitations, if you don't want it to be based upon charges, but instead you want it to be recharging, you can select that. It'll automatically put in how the recharging is done based upon the combat rank and maybe the combat level. I can't remember exactly. It's been a while since I coded it, but it does it based upon GiffyGlyph's formulas. So it's automated for you. And then again, if you want a cooldown, it's automatically computed for you. But I like charges for this feature. If it's a feature that requires an ability modifier, let's say it's an attack or it requires a saving throw, you would select the appropriate ability modifier there. And then we'll go through the rest of this later. All right. So that's me selecting Sneaky. It was as short as me just selecting it, but I spent the time talking to you about what the other stuff is. With your Paragons, you'll see that you're always going to select Paragon Power and then Paragon Defense. And your Elites will have Paragon Defense. It automatically computes the number of times per long rest for the Paragon Defense and the number of times per round for the Paragon Power. So that's just a heads up. You can see the formatting in here is horrendous. It looks pretty terrible, but when it actually goes into improved initiative, it looks fine. You'll never ever touch the description or effect or anything in this row essentially for Paragon Power or Paragon Defense. That being said, let me go over to the stat block and see good old Johnny. I'm going to click on clean here and you'll see that Johnny now has bonus actions, and I call them legendary actions. I get it. They're not. They're Paragon actions, but I wanted to have this in a format where it ingests into improved initiative properly, and so I needed that legendary actions section. Anyhow, if you look over to the top right hand side of the screen here, you'll see the stuff that says we should already have done. Paragon Power, we should have already selected. Paragon Defense, we should have already selected. Stealth and Sneaky, well, I already gave them the Stealth skill and I already gave them the Sneaky feature. So those are done. And on top of all of that, you get to choose 7 to 14 traits, attacks, or utilities. And notice it says here, you have up to 14 more traits. Now, there's no rule of thumb that GiffyGlyph gives concerning the number of rare traits versus uncommon traits versus common traits for a given creature. I need guidance. So otherwise I'm like a kid in a candy store and I'll just eat as much as I can. So I gave myself some guidance here. You can follow this guidance or not. It doesn't really matter. But I tell myself, listen, if you're going to do rare traits, try to limit them for this creature between 1 and 2, somewhere between 1 and 2. Uncommon traits between 1 and 3, and about 7 and 9 common traits. And battle tide effects, if you want to give this creature any of them, between none and 3. So let's start doing this. Let's build this guy out. And if you read GiffyGlyph's documentation, he recommends selecting some ancestral traits. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. I will limit my view or filter my view here to be just the ancestral features. And when I do that, you get still a buttload of features, and you can take your time going through this. So I'm going to sort of pause the video and find good ones. Okay, so I do think that I should scroll over to the left completely first so I can see all the descriptions, but I definitely think Johnny's just going to be arrogant. I'm also going to give him deceptive just because it makes sense to me that he's just kind of like this deceptive dude. I'm going to give Johnny here nimble. Now notice there are 2 different nimbles in here. It's because I started renaming things at some point just because they made sense to me language-wise to rename them. And so there are two different types of nimble. Be very careful about that. I'm going to give him the nimble that he has advantage on dexterity saving throws, just because he's pretty awesome like that. Now, that all being said, I'm going to turn off that filter on the main category. And I am actually going to go ahead. Oh, here's something I could do. I will turn on the class feature filter. These are not very many. You can see right here, there's not very many class features that I have in here. And that's because I haven't made enough bad guys that needed class features. But I feel as though Johnny would have sneak attack. And maybe I'll give him 2-weapon fighting, right? Why not? And assassinate. Why not? I'm just going to give him those. Okay. Let's go through and select some other things here. I remember attacks are also part of the 7 to 14 things that he's going to have to choose. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn off this filter, and I am going to give him a couple melee attacks. So scrolling down here, you see there is a bevy of melee attack options. You could have a common melee attack, an uncommon melee attack, or a rare melee attack. It's, if you know GiffyGlyph's systems, then you know what this means. The common one does 100%, the uncommon does more damage, and the rare one does even more damage, right? And you can describe these thematically however you wish, but the fact is you don't want to just give him a rare melee attack and that's it, because he'll only be able to use that once, and he's going to stand there with his thumb up his nose the rest of the combat. So give him a common melee attack. If he has 2 of them, give him 2 common melee attacks. That's why there's 2 of them there. And then, just in case, I'm going to prep him up with maybe a rare melee attack as well. And then I'm going to give him a ranged attack. And if you want to give him a thrown weapon rather than a ranged weapon, that's fine. There's also a thrown weapon group, but I'm just going to give him a common ranged attack. Now, if I go over to the stat block here and click on clean, it actually doesn't look like it gets cleaner. Well, it sort of does, right? It starts really building this out. But it also lets me know I have chosen 10 common traits. That's beyond the freebies that I'm given. So I've been given Paragon Power, Paragon Defense, and Sneaky for free. Now I have 10 common traits. I'm pretty happy with that. I have 2 uncommon traits and a rare trait. And then maybe I'm pretty happy with that. Maybe I think that's pretty good, but maybe I want to give him a Battle Tide effect. That's kind of fun, and it's a newer feature that I just started using. So let me go ahead and filter these by going back over to main category here, and I will clear that filter and just go to Battle Tide effects. And let's see what the descriptions are, and let's find something that's really cool. And sometimes this is very noisy to read, so you might want to just read in this column to find the right effect for the Battle Tide effect. Let's say that for some weird reason you want to give him clumsy because he either becomes bloodied or enraged, that he's going to get clumsy, and so he critically misses on a roll of 1 to 2. Let's also give him one other one. I like this one. This is just a sick Battle Tide effect. Get over here is a really nice one, so you can immediately teleport your attacker to a space within your reach. So we'll go ahead and do those 2. Now, back to the stat block. Click on clean, and you'll see all of good old Johnny in his resplendent glory. I haven't put in his... actually, I think I did type in his equipment in the last video. Now it's our time to go back over to these features and make a lot of changes by hand. First, I'm going to turn off my filter here. Then I'm going to scroll all the way to the left here, and I'm just going to turn on the filter for what I have actually selected. So these are all the traits that I've selected, or features, I suppose, for Johnny. And I'll go through each one of these and make sure there's nothing that is adjustable, right? If you read this, when you roll for damage, you may re-roll any die that is a 1 or 2. You must use the second result. Okay, there's nothing to adjust there. Under Assassinate, that's the one I said we were probably going to adjust. The requirement, well, if there's a requirement, you might want to change that. My requirement that I have in here is your target has not taken, actually, I shouldn't say my requirement. It's the requirement for the design of this feature. So if I scroll all the way over to the right here, the design notes, it gives you the marker boon. It costs 1 extra effect point, so you've spent 1. But it has a requirement that the target cannot have taken a turn in combat. So that reduces the cost by 1 effect point. So now you spent 1, now you spent 0. It's a free action though. So you get to do it as a free action as part of your attack. You can add it to your common attack or something like that. So that costs you an effect point. And you can deal damage to a single target, and it's 125% damage. So that would be 2 additional effect points. And I did say that this would be a rider to an attack. You have advantage on attack rolls against the target. In addition, any creature that you hit is surprised and takes an additional. There we go. Okay, so it is free. The condition is that you've surprised them and you attack, you hit, and then for free, you get to roll additional damage. So under the requirement, that's the actual requirement. Your target has not taken a turn in combat yet. Moreover, to gain the critical hit ability for the attack, the target must be surprised. The effect, there it is. And if you look at that effect, it auto-generated, based upon this creature's, Johnny's combat level, how much damage should be done. That's 125% of his regular per round damage. And let's scroll over to the right, because over to the right, you'll see right here is kind of the important piece. The damage, you can change that if you want, but this is specifically designed to do 125% damage. But if you want to make these damage dice not D6, but D12s, you can totally do that. If you do that, it automatically adjusts the language. So instead of doing whatever it was before, it's now 10d12 plus 3. Still comes out to that 68 points of damage. All right, of the weapon's damage type. I'm going to change it back to a D6 because I said 68 and I want to see if it is 68. So let's go ahead and do that. D6. I'll scroll back over. Yeah, still 68. So I feel pretty confident with that design. It's for him an uncommon feature, right? Yeah, it is uncommon. So technically he has 5 charges, but honestly, this feature is only going to be used once, maybe twice in entire combat because it can only be done on the first round. So whatever. He's clumsy. And the requirement here is he's either bloodied or enraged. When you see that requirement, don't change it. You change it once you import it into your improved initiative. Or if you're not using improved initiative, if you're doing screenshots of the stat block, which will look horrid, but if you're doing that, then I would recommend choosing crossing out on your screenshot the whichever one it's not going to be. So for him, I'll make the decision once I import him into improved initiative, whether he gains this battle tide effect when he's bloodied or enraged. I'm thinking when he's bloodied. Deceptive, nothing really fancy there. I don't need to worry about any changes. The get over here, again, it has the requirement of bloodied or enraged. I can't touch that, so I'm not going to. And then here comes his melee attacks. Now, let's just pretend that he fights with a rapier. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll over to the right, all the way over to the right. And it's a rapier, so I'm going to keep his ability modifier as his dexterity. Because why not, right? It's 100% damage because it's a common attack. Just leave that alone. But it's rapier, so we're going to call that a D6. I can't remember if it's a D6 or a D8, to be honest with you. It might be a D8. Let's just pretend it is because I can't remember. And then here's just all the justifications for the effect point cost of this to be a common feature. Cost in action, that type of thing. So once I make that decision, you can see it automatically adjusts the 54, 12d8, piercing damage, that type of thing. He has a rare attack, and I might, in this one specifically, well, it is a rare attack. I mean, he's just, it's just like a powerhouse move. So he gets to do this once per day where he does this superb stab or something like that. So let's go ahead and adjust things here. It's an action, it's rare. I put on here recovery. let's see. Yeah, recovery. I don't know what you would do to recover. That's where you would have to make your own decision in there. I think, is there something where I have, oh, there's a recovery. So you could, for example, say, you recover when you reduce an opponent to 0 hit points, for example. I don't know if I have that coded in. Oh yeah, recovery now is in there when you reduce an opponent to 0 hit points. I'm surprised by me. And then let's see, it's going to be based on its dexterity. It's 200%. It's a D8, and it's a piercing weapon. And if you scroll all the way over, you can see instead of doing the measly little 54 points of damage, this stab will do 108. And then he has this other common melee attack, which is going to be a dagger. Yeah. By the way, if he has a reach weapon, I don't have reach in here. You have to change that on your own. But let's go ahead and do the dagger. And the dagger is a dex. Actually, yeah. Yeah, it's dex. He would never fight with anything that's not a dex-based thing. Daggers are piercing. They're D4. And there we go. That one's completely done. Nimble, advantage on dex saves. That doesn't require any adjustments. Paragon, power, and defense never require anything. He has, let's pretend, a longbow. Notice I'm not naming them. So they're just always called ranged attack 1, melee attack 1, melee attack 2. When you move it into improved initiative, which will be maybe the next video, that's when you go ahead and rename the attack as short bow, long bow, whatever it is. But it's going to be a dex 100% D8 piercing. Hey, that's perfect. All right. Sneak attack. Now, this might require adjustments for me. Sneak attack. So the requirement is that you hit a target with advantage or another non-incapacitated enemy of the target is within 5 feet of it, and you didn't have disadvantage. You must be using a finesse or ranged weapon. And when you do that, you deal an extra 54 or 15d6 plus 2 damage. And since I'm using that rapier and I couldn't remember if it's a D6 or a D8, let's go ahead and change it to a D8. And I'll type in here piercing, but I don't think that actually matters for this. I think the additional damage is just the damage of the weapon type. Yeah, so it doesn't do anything. And sneaky, you can take the hide action, 2 weapon fighting, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so I do want to showcase something that requires, we're done with Johnny, by the way, but I want to showcase before I end this video, something that requires an adjustment for a saving throw. So let me just pretend as though, because remember I was trying to get Johnny to be a spellcaster, but I just didn't get around to it. So maybe I'll do an extra video for spells. But let's give him aberrant ground for some dumb reason. So the ground around you in a 10-foot radius is difficult terrain. Each creature that starts its turn in that area must succeed on a set ability mod for DC strength saving throw. So I'll go over here to ability mod and I'll set the ability mod, which determines the saving throw that the creatures have to do. I'll set that to my, maybe it's a force of will. So I'll do a wisdom. Okay. And if I do that, you will see that the saving throw has been adjusted to a DC 16. I had to do a little recode very quickly there, which reminds me, you might have little hiccups here and there. Please let me know if there's something that needs to be recoded very quickly. It's not that difficult for me to do. And the reality is you're not going to be able to save these creatures that you create in this. So it's not that big of a deal for me to then put out a new version of this and for you to then download the newest version. That's not going to be a big deal because you won't have anything saved in there unless you're adding your own traits. Then you'll have to just copy those over basically. Let's see, anything else I need to say about that? Yeah, let's actually talk about spells. So at this point over here, I'll click on clean. Not that I have to, I don't think anything. Oh, something did change. There we go. Oh, because we gave him aberrant ground. Okay. Anyway, you can see that it's keeping track and it says I can have up to 3 more traits if I wanted to. You don't have to if you don't want to. This Battle Tides effect, by the way, I should actually move this over here and get this to be my standard background, because this is supposed to be the sum of the Battle Tide effects, but I'm not going to bother with it right now. By the time I release it, I will have that count up the number of Battle Tide effects you put in there. Anyhow, let's suppose that Johnny is a spellcaster. I said it in, I think, the first video, that I don't do spells the way that GiffyGlyph does spells, just because I tried, and I like the flexibility of having a spell list, especially in the campaign that I'm running. I'm doing all this for a specific campaign. So a lot of the bad guys are spellcasters, and they have a shit ton of spells. And a lot of them do get used, actually. It's not like, oh, they have a fireball and that's all they ever are going to use. They have like 10 spells, and they actually use all 10 because they're moving around in the background as things are happening. So I like to have a spell list. If you're like me, then this is for you. If you're not like me, then you're going to hate this. But I'm going to give Johnny, let's say, Charm Person, Counterspell, just because everybody loves a Counterspell. And Dimension Door, because that's his get out of jail free card. And I'm going to give him a Lightning Bolt. Why not? Now notice there are 3 different lightning bolts, and it should make sense that they correspond to 3 different rarities: common, rare, and uncommon. I'm going to give him if I give him a common, there's a problem. Well, actually, it's not a problem. Remember that his damage per round, I think it was supposed to be 54. His damage per round is supposed to be 54 with any common attack, right? So if I give him a common lightning bolt, people are going to say, wait a second, that's a lot of damage per round. But actually, the common lightning bolt is at 50% damage according to GiffyGlyph's. So yes, I can strike more than one opponent, but after the first time I do that, they're going to spread out. The best I'm going to get is possibly 2, so which puts me at my average damage no matter what. So I could set that for an at will, or I could keep it at uncommon, or I could put it at rare if I wanted to. And let's give him something that is rare, just to showcase how that works. Maybe a fireball was, no. Let's see, what is Enervation? Okay, so I'll give him Enervation just so you could see. Now, on these, you're not going to touch any of this stuff over here. It's hard-coded as far as how the spells in 5th edition go. And you'll see that there are damage dice represented here because, well, the damages that you're going to be doing, those change based upon GiffyGlyph's system. But everything else about the spell remains the same. So if I go over to the stat block now, and I click on clean, you will see, you won't see because it's down below this, but if you scroll down, you'll see you cast one of the following spells using intelligence as a spellcasting ability, because remember, that's what we selected for Johnny here. His spellcasting ability was intelligence. It automatically calculates the spell save DC and the spell attack bonus. There's his common lightning bolt at 5 per day. I had myself confused for a moment there. That 5 per day is because the lightning bolt is uncommon. I confused myself because I saw that damage and I thought, wait, it's doing full damage, but this is at will, but it's not at will. It was an uncommon ability. However, 5 per day is quite a lot for a lightning bolt. So you might want to reduce that down. That's your choice. But you can also see the once per day actions there. Everything else here we're pretty much done with. So we're done with good old Johnny here. And what we're going to do is in the next video, import him into improved initiative for the final fell swoop. All right, hope to see you there.